Okay, is it time for the NHL to reform LTIR rules? Now, LTIR is long term injured reserve, and players can be placed on long term injured reserve if they're going to be out for a lengthy spell with an injury or illness. Now, we've seen fans on social media get frustrated with how LTIR is used, and the examples of teams that have used it to their benefit potentially are Tampa and Vegas. And they've ultimately gone on to win Stanley Cups with key players being placed on LTIR during the regular season. Suddenly they come back for the playoffs and they won silverware. I think the Colorado Avalanche had players on LTIR during the regular season that they won. Florida have obviously recently won the Stanley Cup. Every team will place players on LTIR at some point in the season. There will be a player on a roster who is injured. And the example I'll use is Mark Stone with Vegas. He's had some very serious injuries in the last couple of years. And yes, there was one year where he was placed on LTIR and Vegas won the Stanley Cup. There was another year, I think this season, where he was placed on LTIR and he suddenly plays in game one of the playoffs. Vegas didn't go very far in said playoffs, but fans were saying that Vegas are bending the rules to their advantage. Seasons prior, it was Tampa Bay with Kucherov are bending the rules to their advantage. Steven Stamkos bending the rules to their advantage. They were placing some large amounts of their salary cap on LTIR. We have also seen teams in the regular season playing short benched because in order to get on LTIR, you have to have an independent doctor judge that you are not fit enough to play. There are other teams who've taken basically cap dumps where this player is never going to play again, but they're not ready to retire, and they're also placed on LTIR. So every team uses the current LTIR system. Now, should the NHL reform the system and change the rules? Well, that's down to the League of Governors board meetings, and that's down to general managers when they have these meetings, voting in favour of a rule change. And there doesn't seem to be enough momentum in that area with enough owners and enough general managers wanting a change to the system, because every team uses the system. It is a system that obviously fans are frustrated with, but when you're seeing teams having to short bench in the regular season to stay cap compliant, it says more about general managers signing a lot of contracts they shouldn't sign, and players having very, very good agents. I don't think the salary cap is going to climb at the rate required where LTIR will not have to be used tactically, I think, is a way of looking at it. Yes, the salary cap is now going up again and will continue to climb for the rest of the decade, should there be no issues financially for the NHL. But this is a legacy of the escrow flat cap era. LTIR was being used before 2019-2020 season. It was being used. Teams have been regularly using it since that rule was brought in around the salary cap. But the flat cap over the last 4 years has definitely contributed to a potential abuse of LTIR use, where players who do have ongoing injuries who could potentially play are being placed on LTIR. It helps teams with their salary cap space. Now, some of the players who are on LTIR have had very serious injuries and health issues, and so they're placed on LTIR. But I do think, myself, I think the NHL needs to look at the LTIR rules. But until general managers and team owners, there starts to be momentum within that group of people for a change, and enough owners and general managers feel that the system is broken and needs to change, we're stuck with it until the league decides to vote on the future of LTIR. And from what we can gather, it is here to stay in the format it is currently in. Now, whether LTIR will change in the future and how it's implemented, quite possibly. I think the NHL should look to reform the rules surrounding LTIR and how that helps with cap relief. At the same time, you have to look at general managers and the contracts they've been signing with players and how they've managed their rosters. And some teams, every season, are at or over the salary cap at this point. Toronto is always a prime example of a team that is either at or over the salary cap. Tampa is another team that is either always at or over the salary cap. Vegas, if it wasn't for Leonard being on LTIR, they are going to be over the cap consistently. Other teams struggle to make the cap floor. So It's an interesting one how the salary cap is managed, and LTIR is part of that cap management. But should it be used as a tool to give cap space to a team in the regular season? Also, LTIR and salary cap does not apply for the postseason. So the playoffs, there is no salary cap. And this is where I think, again, fans either don't fully understand how LTIR works, or are even more frustrated that it doesn't apply for the Stanley Cup playoffs, only applies for the regular season. And in the off-season, teams can still make roster moves. There will still be trades and free agents signed and entry-level contract signs and buyouts and waiver wires. But when it's used in the regular season, fans are frustrated. And then suddenly in the postseason, that player who's been on LTIR is activated. We'll use Mark Stone as the example. But there's no salary cap in the postseason because it's the postseason. So I think at some point there will be calls to reform the system that will grow from within the game. Fans calling for changes is one thing. Commentators and media pundits calling for change is one thing. I think change has to come from within the league itself. And I think at some point within the next 5 years, LTIR will potentially get amended, reformed. But right now, it's not going to change. But that's my thoughts on LTIR. I thought I'd do a little video on that, considering that we've now had free agency begin and already multiple teams are over the salary cap. The season's a couple of months away, but it's just an interesting topic that's been frustrating fans for many, many years. For me, for now, thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll have some more content for you guys very, very soon.